Okay, so we're now at the stage where we have now put the ink into the system. We have syringed it to the colour. We have also put the dampers into the print head on the white in position. But at this point, we have not turned the machine on still. Let's just, before we do that, we need to load the film and do a couple of other little bits and pieces before we actually go ahead and turn it on. So at this point still, we haven't turned the machine on. Now, because we haven't turned the machine on, it will allow us to freely move this head to and fro, backwards and forwards. If the machine was on, it wouldn't allow us to do this. So it's a valid thing that we need to know for maintenance and things like that. But at any time the machine is not switched on, we're able to do this freely, as long as it's not capped up in this position over here. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to move this over to the far right hand side out of the way. Now we're going to come to our media clamps, and we're going to take off the tape that's currently on there. These media clamps will now sit to the very edge of our machine, and will be on top of our media once we've loaded the media. Now we're going to spin the machine around at this point, and we're going to go through the loading procedure of the media. Right. So okay, we've got our media now, and we're coming around to the back side. Now this is a 400 wide machine. Our media size we actually we put in is actually best to be around about the 390 millimeters as a maximum. 400 is a little tight. We can do 400 or 395 if you really want to, but my suggestion is 380, 385. It gives you a little bit of extra play, and I'll explain that in down the track. So let's just first of all put our media aside. And we'll see our media setup is like this. It's got two rings. This stops the media roll from jumping in its home, I guess. So before we can do anything, we need to remove these two lock screws. So we remove those and put them aside. We will be using them and putting them back. We can then pull our media holder out of its position. Now, you will notice before you pull it out that the wheels sit inside a designated area of that. So you've got to make sure that that is lined up there, and also that the channel here lines up inside this recess area of this side. So when we put it back in, we need to be very aware of that as well. So we're just going to pull that directly out. And at this point, these are the media holders which can screw out quite easily. So what we'll do is we will then load our media. Now, the media we're printing is on the outside. So what we're going to do is we're just going to thread this through here. Now, you might want to do this on a table, it might be a little easier, or even the floor might be easier to do it on. And then what we'll do for now is we'll just tighten these up with our hands, the screws here. It'll just stop this from sliding on the main core. So we're just going to put that one like that, and now we're going to get this other one, and we're going to put this one on the other end. And now we're going to firmly push, we'll undo each end, and we'll firmly push these adapters onto the roll so they're nice and tight. And then once we've got them nice and tight, we can just hand tighten these for a second. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick this back up, and we're going to put this back into position. So making sure that that notch is on there and the wheel is on there as well. Now, the very important part in this process here is we want to make sure that this, when we undo these slightly, this will now allow us to move the roll within that within the media holder, if you like. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to have this situation where the roll butts up hard against that, because that will cause drag and will cause all sorts of issues. We want to make sure that once we've got the roll media in, that we bring this over and there's a clearance between each end of these. So ideally you can do it like that, so you got like a nice even spacing between each end, or at worst case scenario, it doesn't have to be like that, but they need to be off that. So even if you go tight, because obviously the wider the roll, this is only a 360 wide roll, but the longer you go, it's going to be a little bit wider on the actual roller here. So if you've got a larger roll that you're putting in, you still just need to make sure there's clearance between that and that little bar there, otherwise it will cause issues. So once you have that in the right spot, you can then tighten that just by hand for now. And what we're then going to do is we're going to make sure it freely rolls, which it does. We can see that it freely rolls. Now, the next part of this is that you'll see that there's a back bar in here. So that actually keeps our media with tension and makes it feed nicely. So when you in the position of that's all nice and freely moving, we actually want to go under this bar. So a couple ways of doing it. You can just manually get your hand under it. The other thing also, if you can do, if it's too hard for you, you can actually undo these with the clips and just move that a little bit further to you if you find it's too difficult to do that. Then you can just get your media underneath that bar, and then once you've got your media under the bar, then you can just push that bar back into position, and that'll lock with these two nuts. So load the roll underneath that bar. Then you want to make sure that your media handle is open, and then we're going to feed this through our front rollers. When this is pulled towards us, our pinch rollers are in the up position, which will allow us to pull that through. So once we've got that through and in position, we can then give that a nudge forward, and that now locks our front guides, our front pinch rollers into position. So once we've got it to that point there, we can get an Allen key and just give these ones a little bit of a tighter, give it a bit more of a tightening, and that means that it won't come out of its position anywhere. So that's an important step to do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put our little screws back in place. That'll stop the guide from jumping out. So again, another important step, we just put them in, they just locate and then push them in, and they'll stop like that, and that will now stop any movement coming out of its canister. Another important step. So once we've done that, we'll turn this back to the front. Now what we'll do is, in this position, get to the left position of the machine, we're going to now undo that canister, our lever, which will, sorry I didn't get that quite right, pull that out. Then we come to the front, or you might need a second person if your arms aren't long enough like mine. And then what you want to do is you want to then bring this media and pull it from the center in front like that. And the reason we're doing that is we just don't want to get any bias that way. So if we didn't load it in straight from the front, if we have it on a bias, it'll then start to tail. We want to try and make this as straight as possible. So what we do is we bring it with it under tension, and then we pull that from the center, and we get that sort of tracking nice and straightly. Once we got that nice and straight, we put our finger on that, and then we go back around to the back side, and then we put that back into position. And now that media is now correctly loaded. So when we've got it correctly loaded, then we bring the media clamps, and we position them on the edge of the media. We do 1 and we do 2, like that. Now, in theory, these media guides should just stay in position, but they are quite a flimsy piece. They hold they're very important to have, but we also do find that it is best to get a little bit of tape. A little bit of tape. Cut it off nice and neatly, not like what I've just done there. And just put a little bit of tape on each end. But you want to make sure it's really nice and neat. So let me just get a Stanley knife and make that a nice neat cut. So get that nice and neat, and we'll do that for both sides. Okay, do the same thing on this side, and we'll just neatly do that. We don't want anything sticking up for the head to collect. So as far as positioning is concerned, you'll see this little lug here, if you want to call it a little lug, there, and there. You want to basically put the media in the center of those little lugs there, and then you got it in the right position. Make sure they're nice and flat and nothing's sort of sticking up. And we've now got the media all set up and ready to go. The next part of the next part will be actually turning the machine on for the first time. So okay, so we're at the point now where our media is now loaded. It's all nice and square. We've got our cables in place. You'll actually have both installed, obviously, as per previous videos. And then what we're going to be doing now is we're going to turn the machine on. So just a matter of going to the back of the machine and turning it on. So first of all, you'll see that this is initialized and it's coming on. Part of the initialization will mean that this headboard, the head will eventually come across. It'll find itself, so it knows the position it's currently in, and it's now setting itself back into the home position, which is what we want to see. We'll also see on the screen here that the status says idle. We want to see the word idle on there, and that's going to be something that we want to basically see to make sure we can go to the next step. Now, if we come down to this one here, we can see that we've got our vacuum setting, which is indicated by a fan. If we hit the vacuum, you'll probably be able to hear, or maybe not, you'll be able to hear the vacuum suction increase. We want to basically have this one on 3. So we just hit the vacuum 1, 2, 3 until that's set up. The next one is you'll see front, middle, rear heating. So what we want to do is we want to go to the channel, which basically tells us which particular one we're going to. So we go to the front, we want to actually increase this up to 50 degrees. So we're setting it on the right hand side. So we're going to put everything at 50 degrees. So we're just going to keep this at 50. Then we hit the channel again, so it goes to middle, which is the middle of the machine. We're also going to make that 50 degrees. We hit channel again, go to rear. Again, we're going to go to 50 degrees. And the last one also at 50 degrees. So now we've got our heating settings all finished. When we finish that, it'll automatically just go back to the start. And then once we finish setting all those, we'll then, you'll be able to feel the temperature or the heat, especially in the middle. You'll feel it on this plate starting to heat up. So I can already start feeling that happening. So just keep an eye on that, but that'll start to get warmer and warmer and warmer, which we want that to happen. Okay, so once we've got to the point now where the machine is on, as I said, my machine hasn't got the white in the machine, but yours will have the white in, and you will see the white now starting to fill up into this canister. One thing I think I did forget to mention before, which is okay if you do it now or later, but initially when we put the color head in, we only put the 4 colors in. When we've got the head and all the 4 dampers in position, we can then put the white ink in, or we can still do it at this point. It doesn't really matter. So it's reasonably safe. So once we're now into that position, we can now is pretty much where we're going to start doing the software. At this point where you've got it to this position, this is where now we'll take over and remotely come into your computer, and now we'll take you through every step from this point forward. We will get you the smoke machine all lined up, the powder machine all lined up. We'll get your smoke machine all set up, and at this point here we'll take over remotely. Really just want to do the step-by-step videos to get the printer ready and up into this position.